I would submit that Israel did not steal anybody's land. This is another thing I've heard the last couple of weeks, words like occupiers and colonizers and apartheid, which I don't think people understand the history there. The Jews have been in that area of the world since about 1200 BC, way before the first Muslim or Arab walked the earth, 1,000 years before. I mean, Jerusalem was their capital. Okay, so if it's just about who got there first, it's not even close. There have been a continuous Jewish presence. Yes, the Jews were the ones who were occupied by everybody. The Romans took over at some point, and then the Persians and the Byzantines, and then the Ottomans. So yes, there was colonization going on there. Beginning in the 20th, 19th century, they started to return to Palestine, which was never an Arab country. There was never a country called Palestine that was a distinct Arab country. And yes, there was a problem there because there was two people who wanted to share the land, which is why the UN in 1947 said, okay, we're going to partition it. We have the map. I want to show people forget what the map looks like. This is what was on the table at the beginning. The green is the part that the Arab population would have gotten. It's a good part of the country. It's the good part, a lot of it. Look what Israel has, a little sliver by the coast and the desert in the south. That second map is what Israel has today. Yes, it is a lot more. But doesn't it behoove the people who rejected the treat, the half a loaf, and then continue attacked? Hamas's charter says they just want to wipe out Israel. Their negotiating position is you all die.
Look, if we could come to a deal where there genuinely were moderates at the table, maybe there's something to talk about. But at every stage of the game, we have seen Palestinian leaders, past and present, creating the whole term simply as a ploy to annihilate the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And given that that's been its entire purpose, that the whole national identity, which wasn't even mentioned, there was no such flag and use of the word Palestinian prior to the 60s.
Projection is
before there was an Israeli presence in the West Bank, or really Judea and Samaria. So I don't know why we are expecting something to change when the whole thing is a massive lie from beginning till end. And therefore, a new strategy.
I agree with him on that, but not about the context in which he says it. Go ahead, pause that.
That's so poor.
It's hilariously undereducated, because
to say the least,
there was a Palestine. Here's a IDF soldier getting educated on Palestine right here. There's an atlas. He's getting educated because they're told it doesn't exist or didn't exist. Here's a passport for a place that doesn't exist. It sure is interesting that these things went on, and that they describe in their literature that these are places there was a place they wanted to take over and ethnically cleanse prior to the state being created.
I mean, I don't know why the British, I'm confused. Why did they call it the Mandate for Palestine? The Mandate for Palestine was a League of Nations mandate for British administration of the territories of Palestine and what was called then Transjordan, both of which had been conceded by the Ottoman Empire following the end of World War I. I'm just confused. I mean, they call it, even under the Ottoman Empire, I'm pretty sure they consider that region to be Palestine, as from the reference to when the Romans, the Philistines, they're like the Jews, the mortal enemy. It's sort of when the second of the Second Temple happened in 70 AD under the Roman Empire, I think that was Titus Flavius. That's when that was all, that narrative was all concocted. But
yes, and I think the term mandate was
Palestine.
Just them being woke early on and, foreshadowing the story on Diddy that's coming up later. But the things specifically that I heard Bill Maher kind of repeat, I almost... I got my finger got cramped trying to write so fast because he was going through it. And his first comment was, Israel didn't steal the land. And I try his point on, does this fit? Well, of course, Israel didn't steal the land. It didn't exist until the British gave away the land, colonized it for 20 years, and then let three gangs, Stern, Haganah, Irgun, What else? There was one other
Ergun
one,
Stern Gang,
right?
the
Gangs.
Haganah, the Ergun. Those are the ones
Yeah,
I
the
can't remember.
militant
There's
gangs
hmm they're
that
basically terror, like
that
pseudo
bombed the
terrorist
King David
cells.
Hotel.
That would have been the Ergun, I think,
Yeah.
right? That bombed the King David Hotel.
Yeah. So I mean, I could it was the Irgun that did that, yes. So I could agree with him on that first point because it was definitely the British who gave away land that they didn't own themselves to a third party. Okay. The next part was he said there's no colonization or apartheid. He's obviously never read any of the 5 drafts of the Balfour Declaration because it's all about colonization and apartheid, but that they shouldn't be denied their rights, but there'd be a little separation, right? His next point was the Jews were there since 1200 BC. Again, this doesn't have much to do with the origins of Zionism or the foundational philosophy of those political advisors that created the state and then put their flag on that state, using Jewish people as their proxy, their human shields, if you will, for the endeavor. So 1200 BC, then he lists all the people that conquered in that area. But then he says in the 1900s, so at least he's honest about that, the 1870s, 1880s proto colonization. And then he says that they reoccupied, you know, okay. He said they occupied. That's fine. And then he said the fact about, there's no passports. And when clearly there were passports and there were atlases and it was a place
There
to
was
be
a
taken over,
culture,
to be
there was
colonized, to
infrastructure, there were
have, yeah,
businesses, there was like actually the sports was like rife within the community and well established, and boxing and those things. Like it wasn't it was a former territory of the Ottoman Empire, but arguably the longest lasting empire in history. If you think about just a unitary singular empire, I mean, like it's not like they didn't have major sway or influence, even if it was sort of provincial region, outside the bounds of the sort of, Constantinople, if you will, which is far away. So, I think I want to actually, so that's one thing. I want to draw people's attention to something. So you laid out the facts there brilliantly, but just to what my mentor once wrote an essay called Science or Seance. And the idea is like, what is Bill Maher doing? Like people now know my spiel on fallacies and logic. I think people can see that well enough now. I want to highlight though the way in which fallacies become instantiated in the minds of individuals and then become sort of manifests in their behaviors. So what Bill Maher, first of all, anyone's gone to those types of studios. I remember I once saw Conan O'Brien. They come out with someone, I don't know if Bill Maher does this. I know when I saw Conan, they come out with someone who primes the audience. I've also heard arguments that they also the air in the room is different in regards to the oxygen content. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know they come out with someone who primes the audience. So first, you're in an agreeable mindset, a jovial mindset, right? And he's the star of the show. So then, what does Bill Maher do? Well, now we get into the fallacies. He's using neglected aspects to build a straw man. So he makes a claim that is completely historically ignorant, and then tries to act as though that's the axiom from which we are going to act on. This is the primary proposition. And then he shows his evidence, which is this map, and the fact that they didn't want to capitulate or agree. See, it's the Arabs that did it. It wasn't the Jews. Well, did you ever consider why the Arabs may not have wanted to capitulate? Oh, but that would require the historical context. And that's what they're neglecting in order to build the straw man. But the audience has already been in an agreeable mindset, and so he's sort of the bastion of let's call it the old guard, the old liberal guard that was in support of the state of Israel, seemingly. Sort of the old Democrats, the old liberals, the old Jimmy Dore types. Now, Jimmy Dore isn't. Jimmy Dore has been breaking from that, and it's been a difficult break, I think, at times for him. But Bill Maher is still very, he was great during COVID for being that liberal that was a renegade. Great is a strong word. He was better than most of what we were consuming at the time. I'll put it that way. But now he's back to being, well, you know,
yeah.
a mouthpiece of the
You know
establishment.
what that's called? They have a phrase for that. It's called not Dunning-Kruger effect. It's called the Gell-Mann effect.
Oh yeah,
Murray Gell-Mann,
mhm.
Gell-Mann. He
That's right.
worked with Michael Crichton.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's the wet streets cause rain metaphor. And
Mhm.
basically the gist is
Cart before the horse.
if you're an
ideas.
expert, yeah, if you're an expert, you can read New York Times article in your expertise and you can know it's full of shit. But if you read a New York Times article that you don't have expertise in it, you believe it. So it's
Exactly.
called the Murray-Gell-Mann effect, and it describes Bill Maher.